Hey, what's up guys? My name's Curtis. I go by Sea Love, and today I'm working in the shop with my longtime best friend and fugitive from the law. His street name is Yancey, and we're going to make this small cutting board to get some practice for future projects. I'm going to show you how we did it. Come on, let's take a look. This is only the second time that I've made a cutting board. The first time my buddy and I made two that came out pretty well, and this process should follow that one pretty closely. I'll select the type of wood that we will use to make this little guy, and keep in mind that there is no stain or dye involved in this project. That is the natural color of the wood. We're going to rip down our pieces into various widths and randomly place them because the final outcome of this board is to be somewhat chaotic, if you will. This piece of purple heart was giving us a hard time while attempting to rip it down, so we had to finish the cut by coming from the other side of the board. Unfortunately, this produced an uneven cut. This is easily fixed by running it through the table saw again to square up the edge. I think I like the pattern I came up with, so in order to make this project easier, we're going to take some measurements and quickly throw together a table sled. This will make cutting our board more efficient and safe, and will come in very handy for many future projects. The feet on the sled fit in the grooves on the surface of the table saw and allow it to slide smoothly back and forth without going side to side at all. The next step is to lay out the pieces in the order that you want them in, and then to flip them all up to the left except for the last piece, because you don't need glue on this one. All of the ones that were flipped up get an even coat of Titebond 2 wood glue before I flip them back over, and we struggle with clamps for a little while due to lack of experience. I'll take a moment to encourage you to subscribe to my channel and grow with me as I will continue to post DIY woodworking videos. Make sure and leave me a comment. I'd sure love to hear from you. I appreciate you sharing my video with someone that you think would enjoy it, and go ahead and smash that like button if you love how this board turned out. It's pretty close to lunchtime, so we'll let this set up while we get some food. When we get back, we'll take off the clamps and, using chisels, carefully remove the squeeze out from the clamping process. We'll send it through the thickness planer many more times than I'm showing here to make sure it gets as flat and smooth as possible. Then we square up the ends and trim off a little bit of extra to make sure that we can turn it to the 15-degree angle that we want to use to achieve the final look of the board. This piece isn't going to live in a museum, so we're just going to eyeball it and see what we come up with. Like I mentioned earlier, this is just practice for future designs. It feels like we're getting somewhere, and it sure looks like we know what we're doing. So, using the new table sled and a handy protractor to help us eyeball our cuts, we'll go ahead and glide right through this baby. I'm sure this could be done by yourself with a modification to the surface of the table sled to include clamps, but for the sake of time savings on this project, we chose to hold it carefully by hand while making all of our slices. We're going to lay it out on the table the way it was before we cut it because that looks really cool, and then it's time to rearrange the pieces. I decided they weren't long enough, so I squared them up and trimmed them in half at the longest point to give me some more flexibility on my design. I knew it would be difficult to settle on the final pattern, but as you can tell, there are a mind-numbing number of possibilities that this thing could have ended up in. Some tiny adjustments were needed on the belt sander, and I have to be completely honest with you. I sat there and rearranged all my pieces for quite a while, in part to help me find the final design, but really it was so I could capture all of these shots right here, and that definitely worked out exactly the way I planned. Seeing all of these different layouts, I'm sure you can begin to imagine just how hard it was to find the final perfect look. I'll keep rearranging here for a moment, and once I've decided on the final pattern I like, I'll just simply repeat the processes that we went through earlier to get to this stage. This part is going to go a little more smoothly. We will lay the pieces out on the clamps this time, put a bead of glue on each one, make sure it is evenly applied, carefully flip them back over to the right, and clamp them down, applying pressure from the top as needed. Once the glue is set up, I'll chisel off the squeeze out and square up all the sides on the new table sled. It is really starting to come together, but we will send it through the planer many more times to make it super smooth on both sides for the final time. I'll show you several passes right now so you can get an idea of what's happening here. We only take off a very tiny amount of wood off the surface of the cutting board every time it goes through this machine. Send it through in the direction of the grain to avoid blowout on the sides or ends of your board. Now we are getting pretty close, so Yancey will use a hand router to put a very nice and tiny beveled edge on the bottom to make it easier to grab off the counter. I'll lightly sand it down, spray it with regular water, and look! Let that baby air dry before sanding it down to a velvety smooth 220 grit. The water encourages the fiber on the wood to stand on end, so when you sand it down the last time, it is hard to believe smooth and fun to handle. I'll carefully take the time to sand the edges and bevel down by hand to avoid any oops situations that may be caused by using a power sander. This is really starting to look good, but the corners and edges are still pretty sharp, which may lead to splintering in the future, so I will lightly round off the corners and get to the best part of this video. Let's see what these grains look like. I'm using Howard Feed & Wax Wood Polishing Conditioner. It's a beeswax and orange oil mixture, and it makes the board smell like a pound of freshly picked oranges. So good. You can see once I get the wax on there, the grains really pop out. I'll let the first coat dry for several hours before wiping off the excess and applying a second coat to soak in overnight. Thanks for your time and support. I genuinely appreciate it. I spend my time making things and videos that I hope you will enjoy. Please let me know what you think about this video in the comments section. I'm also open to suggestions and ideas for future builds. Stay tuned for more really great stuff. I'll see you soon.